returns. As you guys already know, we expand the minds, beliefs, and perspectives of the collective and awaken the sleeping many. And today we have the amazing pleasure to go live and speak with Mr. Robert Salas. So he got a fascinating story to tell us, Air Force missile. And so we're going to hear his story and hear what he has to say. It's fascinating. We've been talking briefly for a bit. So yeah, I'm excited to share it with you guys. And I see people are hopping on here. So welcome everyone.
And I have an announcement to make.
Yes.
At the end of it.
At the end, yes. Stay tuned to the end because we definitely have an important announcement that Mr. Salas will make here. So yeah, stay tuned. So we're going to just start the conversation and hope you guys enjoy. Okay. So I would love it if you could give myself and the audience your background, come from.
Yeah.
What do we have to explain? Because I mean the title that we have on this video is something quite interesting. Yeah. So if you could paint us a picture.
Yeah, I was active duty Air Force from 1964 to 1971. Okay. But in 1967 I was a missile launch officer at Malmstrom Air Force Base, Montana. So that's about the middle of the state of Montana near Great Falls. But the work that we did, the work that I did, was to go out to the Launch Control Center. In this case, what we called Oscar flight. It was if you drove by, you'd see. But underground, we had this. So we call the Launch Control Center. That's where we controlled 10 nuclear missiles. So these were Minuteman I missiles. They had warheads equivalent with nuclear weapons with the equivalent of 800 kilotons of TNT equivalent.
Wow. Just
as a matter of reference, the bombs that were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki were about 15 to 20 kilotons. So you can imagine these were very potent weapons. This was the height of the Cold War. So March 24th, 1967, I was on duty. We had about 6 guards upstairs. We were locked in downstairs, so we couldn't get out until we were relieved by another March 24th, I was on duty in the evening. My crew was taking a little rest break. Guard, my main guard upstairs, and he says, sir, we've been seeing strange lights in the sky. They're not airplanes, we don't hear any engine noise, but they're flying very, very fast, stopping on a dime, reversing course, making 90-degree turns. Airplanes can't do that, sir. Okay. You mean like UFOs? I even said, because actually I wasn't a believer in UFOs, but reports in the Great Falls Tribune, the local newspaper, about people seeing lights in the sky. So he said, well, all I can say is these are strange lights. I said, okay, well, call me back if something interesting happens. I just kind of laughed it off. Because I was not a believer. I didn't think about it much. Okay. And then 5 minutes later or so, he calls back, and this time he's very frightened, obviously scared, yelling into the phone, shouting. They're seeing a orange, reddish, pulsating light, oval shape, hovering just above the front gate. 40 feet long, something like that. And he told me to tell him what to do next. The way he sounded, of course, it was a shock to me. I just blurted out, don't let him out the fenced area. I said, okay, and then hung up the phone. I went to tell my commander about the phone calls. And as I was telling him, all of a sudden on our display panel there, we could see the missiles going into an unlaunchable condition. We call them no-go condition. So all 10 of them were disabled.
Could you go into detail what unlaunchable condition means?
Well, okay, good question. We had a kind of a in 1967. Of course, people take it for granted now. I'm sorry,
Alexa.
Alexa. But
She's always listening.
But then, so we queried each missile, and then we got the same message for each one, which was guidance and control system failure. So these missiles were inertially guided. In other words, we didn't have GPS at the time, right? So it's not like they could check in with GPS to see where they were going. We had what's called a stable platform, which was a gyroscopic. That platform had to be oriented where true north was, etc., and what angle to launch, and all those calculations. Mm-hmm. So all this, what happened was it upset that navigation system so that it didn't know where it would go if it were launched. Let's put it that way. Okay. So there was no damage done to the missiles, but it upset the guidance system so that it couldn't be launched, otherwise it wouldn't be on target. Mm-hmm. Right? So that's the message we got from each missile. We reported to the command post. We also had a couple of lights go off called, well, they were from proximity warning lights. If somebody entered the launch facility where the missiles were located, these indicators would show that somebody was there, right? So we got those lights go off too, so I had to call back up. Meanwhile, my commander reported this incident. I called back up and asked if the UFO, I guess, was still there. Mm-hmm. And they said no, it had flown off at very high speed. So, but then I ordered them to go out to these two other launch facilities, and they reported back that UFOs were over those sites. So they were hovering there, so they came back right away. Of course, it was a frightening experience for them. I gotta say, it's hard for me to imagine. I couldn't go up there and look again because we were locked in basically.
Like a bunker style.
Yeah, until we were relieved by another crew. So, but then at that point, my commander turned to me after his phone call to headquarters and said the same thing happened at another flight. Now, at that time, I thought he meant that evening. It wasn't until later I realized the same thing had happened 8 days earlier at another flight. In other words, UFOs over missiles.
They're kind of just going over the different locations.
Well, no, the UFOs in this case were over two of the launch facilities that were being worked on by maintenance crews overnight. But the maintenance crews reported seeing them, and all 10 of their missiles shut down within seconds of each other.
Wow. And so to let our viewers know, as a missile launch officer, those missiles are always ready to go at a moment's notice, right? So to have them shut down is very unusual and not normal. Not normal at all. I was there for 3 years as a missile launch officer, and nothing even remotely like that ever happened. It was rare that one missile went down, and by the way, the missiles were not interconnected so that if one went down, another went down. Mm-hmm. They didn't work that way. They had separate, what we call the SIN lines, SIN lines, going to each missile. Mm-hmm. And these cables that sent the order of, instructions, information to each missile were triply shielded against electromagnetic interference. So wow.
They had triple shielding. This was a very reliable system, but no, nothing like even remotely like that ever. There's something else out there in this universe. Definitely changed my thinking, absolutely. I never forgot it, but the next day, closure statement, that we would never, ever, ever talk about this to anyone, not our wives, parents, nobody.
Amongst yourselves.
Amongst ourselves, no.
So it's,
We couldn't
it never
even talk to
happens.
each other about it. It never happened officially. So I kept that oath, primarily because it scared the heck out of me.
Mm.
Right there in the NDA, it said you would wind up in Leavenworth prison for a long time if you did speak about it.
Very clear.
It was
No
very
room for
clear.
error.
It was that specific. It was that
Yeah.
specific.
Wow.
So I got out of the Air Force in 1971, and then in 1994, after working for FAA as an engineer for 22 years, I decided to become a teacher. And so I was at the University of Washington in Seattle, going through their bookstore, happened to come across a book that's called Above Top Secret by Timothy Good. Picked the book up and opened it to page 301. Just happened to be page 301 of that book. This is the story. On page 301, there's a short paragraph. UFOs shut down missiles in Montana in 1967.
What a coincidence, right?
And that's the only place. That's the only place in that book. And this is a big book. I mean, it's a 500-page book. So I thought, what do you know? Maybe the Air Force just declassified the incident.
They wouldn't let you know if anything like that would happen, right? You wouldn't be
Well, they had no
notified.
reason to call
Yeah.
me and let me know that.
Yeah.
So I decided to go ahead and contact MUFON, Mutual UFO Network. They had a chapter there in Seattle, and I contacted this investigator called Jim Klotz, and asked him to write to the Air Force under the Freedom of Information Act, FOIA, and ask about this incident that happened in Montana in 1967. It was called the Echo Flight incident because that's the way we labeled the launch control centers: Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, etc. I was an Oscar. But don't say anything about UFOs. I said, when you write to the Air Force, don't say anything about UFOs, just ask them about this incident that's written up in this book here. So we did, and we got a response from the Air Force. Since it's been so long, we're gonna declassify it, and we'll send you some documents. And they did.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
They declassified what I'll call the Echo Flight incident.
What time frame was this?
This was 1994 when we sent the FOIA request.
Okay.
So we're talking 27 years after the fact.
Wow.
That's right. Okay, so they sent documents and on the Echo Flight shutdown. Okay. I thought that was my incident because it was so similar to what happened to me that I thought that I was there at Echo. You got to understand, all the facilities look pretty much the same, so I couldn't discriminate where exactly I
Distinguish.
and plus, my memory had been clouded by time after 27 years.
Naturally.
And the fact that I had never talked about it. So I started going public and said, you know, this was a UFO incident. And so I started talking about that incident, thinking I was classified. I went on radio shows, I gave interviews at newspapers. The Great Falls Tribune was my first interview. Front page, by the way.
It is worthy of the front page, though.
Absolutely.
It's a story that absolutely should be there.
So I started talking about it, then finally got a hold of my commander. At first I didn't even remember his name, but finally, thank God he was still alive at the time. He's gone now, he's passed, but Fred Mywald, and he said, you know, we worked at Echo Flight, we were at Oscar Flight, which was a shock to me. Because for the 2 years, this was 1996, I think I got a hold of him. I thought we'd been at Echo. Nope, Oscar. So, you mean to tell me there were 2 incidents very similar? He said, yeah. So, I changed my story to Oscar Flight, and I decided, since the incidents were so similar, and I had already spoken about this being a UFO event, I'm just gonna keep talking.
You can't go back now.
I can't stop. So that's what I've been doing for these last 25 years now.
That's fascinating. Wow, and so after this incident happened for you, you're saying that it happened on multiple other occasions.
Yes.
I mean,
absolutely.
and who knows what information is still heavily classified
Exactly.
for the number of instances that it could have occurred.
Exactly. So, I can tell you that in 1966, a man by the name of Dave Shindeli, lieutenant at the time, he testified at the what we call the hearing disclosure in 2013. A man by the name of Stephen Bassett organized a conference in Washington, D.C., where we invited ex-Congress people, congressmen and senators, one senator, and did a mock hearing as if the Congress was holding a hearing on the UFO question. And so we testified to that, and Shindeli was there. And basically said he relieved the crew, and when he relieved them, all 10 of their missiles had been shut down, and they were told him that happened in 66, 67, 1975, again at Malmstrom Air Force Base. Let's see, there were incidents at Whiteman Air Force Base. Trying to think another base, 1976. I've got this written up. I've got these details in my book called Unidentified, the UFO Phenomenon. People can buy it on Amazon, or they can also go to my my YouTube page or channel, and look me up as Bob Salas, and on there, since it's been over 50 years, I did a 50th anniversary production of 7 short videos describing not only the incident, but the Air Force cover-up about the incident and a lot of these other cases. And they've happened all over the world. It happened in Russia. UFOs actually started a launch of a missile, nuclear missile, and then shut it down just to scare the heck out of them, I guess. And then Aviano Air Force Base in Italy, the Rendlesham Forest incident also involved nuclear weapons, UFOs coming over, just shining a light on the weapons storage area. Schusterberg Air Force Base in the Netherlands in 1979. So there have been many instances where UFOs were involved at nuclear weapons facilities.
So then, especially that it crosses so many different time periods, and we've gone through different wars and so much history, is this essentially saying that the UFOs and the beings that are there don't want us to use nuclear weapons? In short, they
Well, I think they want us to realize that we could destroy ourselves and destroy our civilization and most other living things on the planet if we had nuclear war. I'm sure you've heard of the nuclear winter.
Yeah.
And maybe you've seen the special on Chernobyl and what radiation can do and how it can kill.
How long lasting the effects of
And
it
how
are.
long lasting, yes. So I think they are, my incident and the others I mentioned, similar incidents, were simply a warning for us to consider abolishing nuclear weapons, because they're not really weapons of war. I mean, you know, our military, we'll call them, you know, weapons of war, but they're not. The reason they're not is because if we ever went to war with these weapons, it would simply be annihilation of civilization. They are so powerful, like I mentioned, extremely powerful. We have tens of thousands in the world, approximately 20,000 or more.
And so are they just considered just really big, like threats? It is a threat, but I'm saying is every country just trying to have these nuclear missiles and weapons just to show like, oh, we are prepared.
Well,
If in case everyone starts pointing a finger at us, or you know, it's kind of a big. They're just showing off.
war, you know, it was basically the U.S. versus Russia, and we built up. We had a buildup of weapons. I think the U.S. had about 37,000 operational nukes. 37,000.
Wow.
I think the Russians had equivalent 35,000, something like that. So between us, we had about 70,000 nuclear weapons.
It's too many.
70,000. So this was called mutually, but it was based on what was called deterrence, nuclear deterrence, deterring other countries from attacking because of the power we had with nuclear weapons. So, well, that was the idea. Now, you could argue that it has worked, because we haven't had a nuclear war since, we haven't used them since World War II. However, you could also argue that it's made more dangerous world regarding nukes, because other countries have acquired them. And today, as we speak, we have two nations that have nuclear weapons that are in a military conflict. They're fighting each other.
For those who don't know, what nations are those?
We're talking about Pakistan and India. They're fighting over Kashmir. And they have shot down drones, and which could be mistaken for, I mean, if UFOs, for example, came over and their nuclear weapons storage facility of one of the countries, and that country shot at it, it could trigger, you know, retaliation, could trigger a nuclear war. So it's a very precarious situation. And of course, we've got North Korea to worry about, and possibly Iran. And then there are other countries waiting in the wings, like Saudi Arabia, for example. The U.S. just signed an agreement with them to transfer nuclear technology to Saudi Arabia. I think it was supposed to be for the nuclear power plants, but still, it's a transfer of technology. So we live in a very dangerous world right now as we speak with regard to nuclear weapons. Things could be triggered by an accident, by a mistake. You know, I hope many of your listeners have seen the movie like Failsafe or Dr. Strangelove. Have you ever heard that movie?
No, but I'm going to.
You should see, you have to see Dr. Strangelove especially. It's hilarious, but it's a dark comedy, but it's about nuclear war.
Wow. But it sounds like a very unique film, that's for sure. Comedy and dark. I'd love to know more about, so you said you had an NDA on a disclosure agreement that you had to sign, and you couldn't talk about
Right,
this.
I couldn't talk about it.
I'd love to dive into then. So this is an occurrence that you signed the NDA because they've had contact before, or because I know that how are you able to come out, and be safe?
Well, I'm still in violation of that NDA, because it's, and I have been.
Exactly,
But the reason is because, and I've been talking about this for 25 years, so, and nobody in the government has ever knocked on my door and said, come with me, you're going to jail, or harassed me about it. And they don't want to, because I have been public about this being a UFO. In jail, I would scream bloody murder about UFOs and the cover up and the whole thing. They don't want to see that. Now, I do have to explain why it was that this echo flight incident was printed out in a book above Top Secret by Timothy Good. It was, and one of the reasons the Air Force made me sign this NDA was because at the time, it started in 1966, was what we called a Condon investigation. This was an Air Force contract to the University of Colorado, and under one of their physics professors, Edward Condon, he was head of an investigation for the Air Force, was given a contract to look into the UFO question, because there had been many public reports by then, specifically in Michigan and Pennsylvania, I think, about UFO sightings, and they were seen by the public. To do an official Air Force went ahead and gave this contract. They had officers at different bases to work with them, and one of those officers was at Malmstrom Air Force Base, a man by the name of Lieutenant Colonel Chase William, not William, but the guy's first name, Chase. So many people on the base, including civilian contractors, have seen these UFOs at Malmstrom. And a few of them worked for a man called Fowler, Ray Fowler, who was a manager for the electrical system, the Minuteman system. And so they had these civilian contractors at Malmstrom Air Force Base. And those contractors reported to Ray Fowler that they had seen UFOs, and they knew that UFOs were involved in the shutdown of the missiles, what I just described to you. And Fowler reported this to the Condon investigator. The Condon investigator in turn went to Malmstrom Air Force Base to look into it, since they wanted to investigate it, and they returned. He said he didn't know anything. So and Ray Fowler is upset about this because he knows darn well this was a UFO event. So after the Condon investigators finished their report, the investigated
Exactly the way they wanted it to.
Exactly the way they wanted it to end, and they whitewashed the whole thing. They stopped investigating UFOs, issued a declaration to the public that they were no longer going to investigate UFOs. This happened early 1969. So Fowler got upset about all this and gave an interview to the Christian Science Monitor. in 1973. So that is how Timothy Good got hold of that information about the Echo Plus shutdown, and he put it in his book. And that's what I saw when I opened it up. So that kind of
Loops it all together.
completes the circle of how I was able to go public.
Wow, that's fascinating. So have you had any other experiences yourself since then of either seeing, like maybe perhaps physically seeing a craft? Like
How did you know?
I've seen, usually it's not a one-time kind of thing, you know? So what's your
Yeah.
life been afterwards? I mean,
Yeah, well, I write about this in my book. My latest book called Unidentified UFO Phenomenon. I wrote another book about the Maelstrom incident called Faded Giant. You can get either one of these on Amazon. But in 1985, my wife and I were living in Manhattan Beach in a particular house that I recall. We had two small kids. Middle of the night, we see a blue light in the living room. I tell my wife, she wakes up, also sees the blue light. I say, I'm gonna go check it out. And so I try to get up and I can't move, paralyzed. And I struggle to get my mobility back, but I can't move. I turn to my wife for help and she's out. She's unconscious. So there I am, still struggling, and then all of a sudden, in the doorway of the bedroom, I see this hooded. And what I'm telling you now is the result of 4 hypnotherapy sessions I had to recover these memories. Because I'll tell you that later. Anyway, so I see this hooded figure in the doorway, can't make out the face. But I'm also aware of other small beings in the room. Anyway, I'm aware that they're small and they're around. The next thing I know, I'm being lifted off the bed. These small beings are carrying me towards the window, which is locked.
comforting. Because you can't move and this is all happening around
And
you.
I can't move. I'm still paralyzed, but I can see what's going on.
Do you have your audio that you can hear as well, everything that's going on?
Well, I guess I could see what was going on. I could actually see my wife lying on the bed as I passed by her. And I'm thinking, they don't know how to open the window. These are just like children, you know, because I had locked it. Well, they took me right through the window.
I was gonna say, they don't need to open the window.
They don't need to. I know how crazy this sounds. Believe me, I know how crazy it sounds. I'm a left-brainer. I taught math in high school for 17 years. I was an engineer for 22 years. I'm a left-brainer.
So this just seems completely absurd
This is absurd.
by logical standards.
Yes.
Yeah.
But this is what happened. So next I'm on a metal bed, I think, inside the craft, and I'm being shown a long needle. I mean, it was long, but it was being held right in front of my eyes by these very long, bony fingers. They just held it right, this E.T. Held it right in front of my eyes and communicated to me that they were going to insert it in my groin area. And it wasn't going to hurt, but when they started to do that, it hurt like hell. It was very painful.
Were you still unable to move at that point?
I think so. I don't remember kicking and screaming or anything. I'm sure they had me sedated or hypnotized or something. But they did communicate to me what they were going to do, and then I communicated back the pain I was feeling, and the pain just went away almost immediately. So, other than that, I remember being checked by another ET, turned me around, poked his fingers down my spine, And then I was led off along a curved corridor and white light, and I'm back in bed. So the next morning, neither my wife or I remembered any of that. None of it.
So even you didn't wake up and recollect, oh, that was a weird dream, nothing?
Nothing. We just went about a normal day.
So then how did you get into the, like,
So
that passive
now-
regression? Or,
Fast forward to 2007, I think. 2007. We were in Ireland, and by that time I was on the speaking circuit. I was speaking at a conference in Ireland, and there was a woman talking about her abduction experience on the stage, and she happened to mention the blue light in her room. And at the time of her abduction, I turned to my wife and I said, because this rang a bell, you know. I said, do you remember a blue light in our bedroom at one point? She said yes. She confirmed it. So, and we hadn't talked about it at all, I mean, in all that time. So from 1985, 2007, what's that, 23 years?
yeah.
Yeah, no, 22. Well, anyway, we hadn't talked about it at all, and here she was confirming it. So at that point, I decided to go ahead and get hypnotherapy and try to recover these memories. And I worried about, you know, coming forward about this because of my so-called reputation. I'd already been speaking about my other UFO incident. So I was worried, you know, I'd get some people laughing at me because of this. But the abduction phenomenon is a very real phenomenon. You know, verify, validate that aspect of this whole UFO phenomenon.
Wow.
So I've been speaking publicly about it since I think 2012 or 2013.
Has that experience, have you had any reoccurring experiences that were similar to that abduction, or have you had any
Now, my wife
other
has.
contacts? Like,
My wife has, and I have had other strange things going on, but nothing I can pin my finger and pin down without going through hypnotherapy again. I think once, that one incident was enough to validate the fact that, yeah, we have probably been taken multiple times.
Wow. So, I mean, it's really important to share, because I mean, there could be other people, and maybe they see blue spheres, maybe they have something similar that happened. The question to you though is, why do you think you didn't remember anything? Why do you think it had to come through a hypnotherapy session?
Oh, I think it's intentional. Other abductees have talked about ETs, communicating with ETs during the abduction experience. And the ETs saying that you won't remember this for a while. Eventually you will remember it at some point in the future, but for now you won't remember it. So they have a way, I guess, of obscuring those memories, keeping them locked in.
And maybe it's to save one from kind of going crazy also, right? If you're not able to handle that kind of information, who knows at that time, maybe your level of consciousness has to be able to match it, or at least accept the idea.
Possibly.
Knowing who you were when this event happened, do you think that you would have accepted the idea if you had those memories with you? Right after the event?
Hard to say.
It's a different
Yeah,
timeline.
it would certainly cause anxiety knowing what happened, because obviously nobody wants to be taken in the middle of the night, kidnapped, taken from their family, and not knowing when they would be or if they would come back. That would be a very
distressing
situation. Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible information. Thank you so much for sharing on that. And I know, wow, like, thank you really. And you
Well-
for your service and for being able to disclose this kind of information, because here at this conference, we are all about full disclosure, and getting this information out there to people.
Absolutely.
Because you're not the only one. There's plenty of other people that have experienced something similar, whether it compares to like nuclear missiles being disarmed, or something appearing in their room. Someone can relate to this. So thank you so much
You bet.
for sharing that.
And I do want to make an announcement.
Yes.
And this is a first on your show.
Premiering here.
I'm going to run for Congress. So, because one of the reasons is because I want to get this UFO question or the phenomenon investigated by our government and try to get disclosure. Our government or secret parts of our government have been the UFO phenomenon for a long, long time, probably since the Roswell incident. They've uncovered secrets on extraterrestrials. They have back engineered probably some of the very important secrets. Important. We should know. We should be involved in what to do about what has been learned and how to go forward. So that's going to be my main platform in Congress. I'm serious about this, and I hope all of us to get this information out, tell the truth, and get the government to tell the truth about it.
Coming.
It's long overdue.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Absolutely. Well, that's great news. I mean, I think that's exciting.
Yeah.
So I hope our viewers find that great.
I'm committed to doing this. So,
Absolutely.
if anybody wants to support me, I'm going to I do have a presence on Facebook, and right now I'm asking for donations to get together the filing fee, which is not a small amount, $1,740, I think. So I'm asking for some donations there, and then later on when I do run, I'll have a full-blown campaign going.
Okay. Do you have a website set up though at the moment?
I'm not
it's
at this
the process?
particular moment, but people can go to my Facebook page, Robert Salas, and get linked into where they can send a donation.
Great, yeah, and I'll put a link down in below in the video after it's done uploading. Okay, or done streaming, sorry. Okay, great.
Okay,
Well, thank you so much for sharing that exciting announcement.
yes,
I'm sure that many will support you in your endeavor, and I hope we make it. I hope we make it your reality.
well, I'm gonna give it a try.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give it.
That's already
I'll try.
10 steps forward by just trying.
Exactly.
Otherwise, if you don't try, you're not gonna get anywhere.
You betcha.
So thank you so much for coming into the show, Robert Salas. This was really, really great. I
Thank you, Trish.
enjoyed it a lot, and I'm sure we'll be talking soon. I mean,
You bet, thank you,
Yeah.
Trish.
Thank I
Appreciate
really
it.
appreciate it. Thank you very much. All right, thank you guys for tuning into the show. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll stay in touch.